Israel's leadership is focused on the country's outer threats, its domestic problems are still alive and kicking. Segregating of women in a public sapphire is still a controversial issue, and despite increasing awareness, it's expanding to more and more sections of public life. i24 News correspondent Shachar Peled has the story.
A woman boarding the front door of the number 56 bus in the Jerusalem ultra-Orthodox neighborhood Ramat Shlomo was not a familiar sight up until several months ago. Veteran activist Anat Hoffman took us on the bus ride and explained where change is growing from.
We're on a freedom ride, and we're riding a segregated bus. You'll see that the women are already boarding from the front door. That's an incremental advancement, because until a few months ago, they all boarded in the back.
Since 2010, the Israel Religious Action Center is monitoring demands by ultra-Orthodox streams for women's exclusion. Their newest report points at an increasing public awareness of the segregation phenomena, which reached its peak during the 2011 public protests on the matter and the international attention it received. Former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton criticized the growing exclusion of women from Israel's public life, while performer Barbara Streisand seized the opportunity to voice a deep concern during her recent visit to Israel.
Distressing to read about women in Israel being forced to sit in the back of a bus, or when we hear about women of the wall having metal chairs hurled at them when they attempt to peacefully and legally pray.
Now the Attorney General, 2 months ago, issued a decision that this is something that is a felony. That if you segregate in a public space by the authorities, you are committing a felony. And this has brought a tremendous decrease in this phenomenon.
The interurban Israeli bus systems are trying to cope with the phenomena and enforce the legislation.
There are signs in the entrance and in the exit saying that people can sit anywhere they want. And by sitting here, we're signaling there's no segregation.
Despite the improved policy, the exclusion of women from the public sphere still hasn't vanished from the Israeli society. Only a month ago, another example of women's segregation occurred in the city of Bet Shemesh, when a young woman was asked to sit at the back of a bus by an ultra-Orthodox couple.
The woman came to me and told me it was a religious kosher bus. I didn't quite understand what she wanted from me. She told me women sit in the back, so I told her it's difficult for me with 2 children and a bag.
But after the driver got involved and called the police, who arrested the harassing couple, the response resulted in stones thrown at buses all over town. In some aspects, the trend has even expanded into more areas.
It started mainly with the issue of segregation on buses, but unfortunately, exclusion of women and gender segregation has spread to many other areas, and we have been dealing with segregation in funerals, in municipal events, not letting women speak on a radio station, which has a license from the state.
There are signs that require modesty in the public sphere. Women are not allowed to walk in the street unless they're modestly dressed, and somebody will spit on them or shout at them.
In many occasions, women are still banned from speaking or singing on stage, never mind adopting religious traditions.
At the Western Wall, women are not yet able to pray as men do, wearing their talit, praying out loud, and reading Torah. Reading Torah is still not allowed to women and is allowed to men. We're working on that.
The center's general aim is to reject any attempt to create separate spaces between secular and ultra-Orthodox populations, although extremely religious people think the secular majority's involvement is unnecessary.
It's our problem. Don't intervene. What does it matter? If we decide what we decide, what the rabbi will decide for us, we follow what is written in the Bible. What do you care? Why do secularists care what we want?
I understand that there are closed, intimate societies with their inner codes, and I don't want to intervene. But in a place where the intimate society seeps into the public sphere, there's a leak. And like with any leak, it needs to be found in time because it might become a flood.
And with me now in the studio is i24 News correspondent Shachar Peled. Good evening, Shachar.
Good evening, Lucy.
what is new? We've been living here for the last few years. We've been seeing it. What is new? And more than that, how come it's happening in the only democratic country in the Middle East?
In the region, yes, absolutely. Well, as we've seen, the women exclusion phenomenon in Israel hasn't yet decreased significantly. It's still here. Well, right now with issues like Syria and Iran on the agenda, it isn't really the flavor of the month, but it still exists, and unfortunately it's expanding outside of buses as we've seen. There's a new report over these matters, and in the latest report there are numerous stories of women that have been shouted at to sit at the back of the bus. But not only that, women aren't allowed to give eulogies in their relatives' funerals. There are separate entrances in medical clinics. Stories even about children's playgrounds with separate hours for men and women. So it is growing more and more ridiculous. And as you said, in a democratic region, this is something quite absurd. Only last January, there was a gynecology conference where women weren't allowed on stage. So 2012 hasn't seen much of the improvement we would like to see on this matter. And people in Israel are grown more aware of it, but there's still much to be done.
There's definitely much to be done. Shachar Peled, our i24news correspondent, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.